Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight, it was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What kind of slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump just continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you early today. This is Toadstool Sports Wednesday, February 25th edition. Not a good day yesterday on the show. I'm not happy about it. The NBA especially. At least the Celtics won, I guess, for my rooting purposes. But yeah, we went 3-4 yesterday. Horrible game to kick the night off. Notre Dame basically not even showing up against Duke. Duke puts up 100 points. There's no way that I expected Duke in a spot like that to put up 100. I was expecting like 70-55, something like that. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. What can you even do? Minnesota, Missouri as well, but Minnesota covered. I believe they lost by 10. They were hanging. It was a wire-to-wire cover. They were hanging in there. They were able to successfully slow Michigan down a bit in that one. So that one got their Missouri outright win against Tennessee, I'm pretty sure. So that was a good one. And then we did hit on Baylor as well. So college basketball was going well. What was the score in that? I didn't even see what the score was in the Baylor game. I'm going to look right now. It was close. Baylor lost by 7, but they did indeed cover the spread. And then USC, not a good game for them at night. They had some chances, man. They were in range to potentially cover that. They just needed to go on a little bit of a run in the second half. That didn't happen. Bad performance from USC, man. That team, they're done. They're not making the tournament. They're out. Horrible. They just can't even show up and cover when they need to. And if you look at the stats in that, I think the stats are ridiculous in that game. I'm going to look right now. I think there was some major outlier in that game. If I can find it, I'm looking right now. I don't have this up right now, but let me see. I complained about it last night. There was some crazy thing going on. Yeah, USC out-rebounded UCLA by 10, and they still lost the game. They were -9 in turnovers. UCLA only had 5 turnovers, and USC only shot 35% from the field. So those are basically the differences in the game. That's ridiculous. Horrible shooting from USC. If you out-rebound a team by 10, you have absolutely no excuse to not even cover as an underdog. Absolutely ridiculous. And then the NBA was terrible. The Indiana Pacers kicked it off with a bad performance. They couldn't get it done. I think they might have been down exactly 10 at halftime maybe, but it was, they could not get it done, not even close. And then my Celtics were able to still beat Phoenix. Phoenix definitely struggling on the offensive side, although the Celtics, dude, they play slow. I don't usually talk about pacing in the NBA, but the Celtics are the slowest paced team in the NBA. So that's another reason that you may not want to lay points with the Celtics in a game like that. Phoenix was winning the game, I think, at halftime. They were winning outright. So I think it was looking to be trending all right, and they still couldn't get it done. I don't know what to tell you, man. And Phoenix, I believe they're the best covering team in the NBA this year, too. Although you could make the argument, well, that's going to regress. The odds makers have to just adjust. But, I mean, that was a spot where they were getting 7 at home. Although I think the line actually dropped. I think it was like 5.5. All right, let's get into today. I'm hoping this is not going to be that long of a video. This is going to be a rare situation. You guys are not going to enjoy this show, although I will talk about the big games. But I don't know if, since I've been doing this, I don't know if I've ever had a Wednesday where I have no college basketball plays, but that's what we have today. I don't have any. I hate the college basketball board. You got to know when to fold them, man. And I know, like, maybe I'm being too selective or something. I have no idea, but I'm only going to have one play. It's going to be in the NBA. And then NHL, it's kind of a difficult read coming out of the Olympic break, so I'm skipping it, although I will talk about how to generally handicap that, which I already talked about recently with the NBA after the All-Star break. It's similar. All right, college. I'll give some opinions on some of these games, but I just saw nothing strong enough. Like, I'll talk about what I think are maybe the stronger opinions today, but it's just bad. Like, looking at this card, there's just nothing that I really love at all. There's one 11 a.m. game for some reason on ESPN Plus, not ESPN 1, which is just ESPN. I'm way out of it this early, man. Bucknell is at Army in the Patriot League. These two teams have both had horrible seasons. I forget how the Patriot League sets up as far as how many teams make their tournament. I want to say that the bottom 2 teams in this conference don't make the tournament, so I think that's what these teams have to play for right now, because these teams are tied with Holy Cross all at the bottom of the Patriot League. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what the motivation is here, that these teams are playing to get into the Patriot tournament at all. So, like, one of these 2 teams will not make it if that's the setup. Bucknell has lost a bunch of games in a row. And usually you see Bucknell doing decent in this conference. They've lost 5 games in a row, and they just lost horribly at home to Holy Cross. So I think you will see Bucknell show up after a horrible game like that. They were favored in that game, although not by much, because they're awful this year. Bucknell did already beat Army this year, because who hasn't, basically, in the Patriot League. Bucknell lost. My mistake. They lost at home to Army in overtime. I don't know how I didn't realize that. Bucknell were 4.5-point favorites in that one, and they lost. So there is actually a road revenge motive for Bucknell here. Army just had a game against Navy where I think they get up emotionally for it, but they lost the game pretty badly. So I expect them to show up. It's just that Army is just really not a good team. And this is Army's final home game, so you can see why there's some conflicting factors here that I just don't love, because I talked about this yesterday. When you get a team, the two of the main handicapping factors here in these smaller conferences right now, well, the final home game kind of applies to all conferences, but a team usually gets a little bit of a boost when they're playing their final home game because they celebrate the seniors and whatever, and they're not going to play again on that floor that year, so they want to give the fans something. So it's a little bit of a motivator, but the other thing is we have to look at the teams that have already clinched their conference regular season title, and I will point those out. I pointed out a couple of them yesterday. Some of them are playing today. I think at least one of the ones I mentioned yesterday is playing today. So those teams, you do not want to play on them, I will tell you that, because they just have no real motivator. So that's the thing that we have going on here. But yes, all of that being said, in that Bucknell Army game, even though Army might get a boost from that, I would lean to Bucknell in that game. Army is up to a 3-point favorite, which, I mean, do you think Army should really be a 3-point favorite, even in their final home game against any of these other teams in this conference? I'm not sure that the answer is yes, so that's what I think about that game. 6 p.m., we do have ACC action between Wake Forest and Boston College. Yeah, great game here. Both these teams are not playing. Well, actually, Wake was playing a little bit better. Wake had won 3 games in a row. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking Wake was on this bad skid, but they did lose to Virginia Tech. They caught Virginia Tech Virginia Tech was in a bad spot where Wake caught them. I thought Wake would play better, but Wake wasn't in a great spot either off of upsetting Clemson. So Wake just did lose a win streak with that. It was a bigger game, I would say, for Wake playing Virginia Tech. BC is coming off a loss, I believe, at SMU. Yeah, and now BC's coming back home, and BC lost their last home game to Cal. They lost their last 3 home games, in fact. Actually, 4, my mistake. BC, their only conference wins do both come at home, though. Did both come at home against Syracuse and Pitt. Wake, not as bad as those teams, I guess, but still not good. Even though Wake is, I think, lower in the standings than Syracuse, I don't think Syracuse is very good at all. BC, they are on a huge skid. They've lost a lot of games in a row here. 7 games in a row, whatever this is. Not even close against SMU in their last game. But now, again, they're coming back home, and a lot of times when a team does come back home, this is their second to last home game in the case of BC. When a team comes back home and they didn't do well in their last home games, a lot of times they will show up with a better effort. Wake is coming off the bigger game and lost a win streak, so I would lean to Boston College in this game, but it's not a strong lean. Wake is laying 4 on the road. You're also talking about like a North Carolina team flying up here into the aftermath of the blizzard, and it's actually snowing this morning here too in Massachusetts. The snow shouldn't affect this because it'll be over by like noon today, but there's still a lot of snow on the ground here. These North Carolina teams, like, do you really want to fly up to Boston and play BC in this with this weather going on, even though it's an indoor game? Probably not. So, and maybe their travel does get affected by whatever the aftermath of the blizzard is. So, I mean, there's still schools that are canceled today because of the blizzard. So, apparently not Boston College, though, or at least not their basketball program. But I'd take the points with BC in that one. All right. Citadel and Furman is a little bit of an interesting one in the SoCon. Furman is still battling potentially for the second seed in the SoCon. East Tennessee State has already wrapped up the 1 seed, so they will have nothing to play for today pretty much, which I'll talk about in a bit. Furman is coming off a couple of big games. They played East Tennessee, lost at home by 9, and then they beat Wofford, who is one of their competitors right now for the second seed in the conference. That was a big road win for Furman. I do think Furman is the better team, and that was road revenge for Furman as well. So they're coming off a big performance. They're playing Citadel, but there's a chance they don't overlook the Citadel. And this is why I can't find anything to play today, because I'm like, oh, well, Furman might be in a bad spot off of that nice game against Wofford. They're playing the Citadel. Oh, but Citadel actually beat Furman on the road at Citadel. So Furman might actually take them seriously because Citadel actually did beat them. And this is Furman's final home game. So there's nothing I could really do there as far as like, yeah, I really want to fade Furman here. I don't really. Citadel has lost 4 games in a row. I'm expecting that they will show up. They did just lose their final home game pretty badly, unfortunately for them. So it didn't work out in that game for them. But they might show up for a game against Furman, try to play a little bit of a spoiler role. Furman is down from 16.5 to 15.5. I still probably agree with the Citadel side, but it's not strong at all. And it would be plus the points, of course. Peacock, NBC Sports, 7 p.m. One of the huge games of the day is number 15 St. John's at number 6 UConn. This game is going to be in Hartford at the Civic Center, so the bigger arena for UConn, which is not on campus. So it's a little bit less of a rowdy environment, which I think is probably a slight negative, it's slightly less of a positive, let's say, for UConn. But UConn's going to be motivated here, man, because they lost to St. John's earlier this season. That's UConn's they have 2 conference losses. That is one of them. The other one was Creighton, who they already beat badly earlier in the season. So UConn only has 1 loss to a team that they haven't beaten, which is St. John's. This will be a big game for them. UConn coming off a win over Villanova. That was a pretty nice win for UConn. Villanova running 3rd in the Big East right now, and gave UConn a problem the first time they played. So UConn, they are coming off a big game, so that might affect them a little bit in the negative, having to play 2 big effort games in a row. But they did pull away in that Villanova game, so the later portions of that game were not like a completely max effort. St. John's coming off just a monster win over Creighton. They blew Creighton out by almost 30 points at home. So the travel's not bad for St. John's, just going from basically New York to Connecticut here. Very quick trip for St. John's. I would probably have to lean to UConn, though. I expect UConn will show up with force in this one after they lost the first time to St. John's. They're down from 5.5 to 5. It looks like some of the money is showing on UConn now. 75% of tickets, 86% of the cash on them. I wouldn't disagree with laying it with UConn in that one, but it's not a very strong opinion from me. Number 7, Florida is at Texas. And I think the public's going to see this. This is on ESPN2 at 7. The public is probably going to see this and think that it looks really easy to lay the points with Florida here. When it looks too easy, a lot of times it is, or I don't know. I don't know what the best way to phrase that is, but nothing is that easy. Florida's down from 7 to 6.5 here. 88% of the tickets, 99% of the cash on them is probably not accurate, but I believe they will be a really public side here. It's just I can't really get there with this game as far as the situation. Florida on a 7-game win streak, they're just rolling. They just played Ole Miss. The negatives that you can point out about Florida here are second straight road game for them. They got to go to Austin, Texas here, and they do have a ranked Arkansas team on deck. So I guess there is the potential that they have a little bit of a look ahead there, but I don't find this to be a very strong read here. And for Texas, they did just lose a 5-game win streak. So sometimes when a team loses a win streak, they'll be hung over into the next game. Texas lost at Georgia. Both those teams fighting to get into the tournament right now. If Texas wins this game, I will tell you that they're in the tournament if they win this game. I'm pretty sure. Like, that would pretty much be the scenario. Texas does probably know that. So I think you're going to get an effort out of them, and they are getting points at home. And Texas continues to be an underrated commodity. I should bring up KenPom, even though I'm not even going to have any plays today. And usually I just kind of skip talking about it for most games. But for Texas, he has them 32nd in the country, man. So he's got Texas as good enough to be a tournament team. They're almost elite on offense. They're just not good on defense, like, at all. They're going to slow the game down, though, Texas. They play slow and they get good shots, and they're a very unlucky team, according to KenPom. Florida's very unlucky, too, though. So KenPom is telling you Florida is absolutely elite, and they are the significantly better defense, but they're not the better offense here. It's a tough call. I guess I would probably lean towards grabbing the points with Texas in that one. I think Texas should be, like, super motivated here because they're trying to make the tournament at all. When you're getting a home underdog like that is playing with what I think you pretty much know is going to be a max effort here, whereas Florida, I think the effort could be a little bit more in question there. So I'd lean Texas, but it's a pretty weak lean for me. Kyle, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Big Ten Network at 7 p.m. Maryland is at number 12, Nebraska. This is not an interesting game to me. Nebraska is going to be a huge favorite. I don't believe these teams have played this season. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. I don't think so, because I don't see the Big Red and anywhere else. Maryland did just get a win at home against Washington. That was a fine win. Washington's all right. But now going on the road to Lincoln, not going to be easy for a team like Maryland. Nebraska has been really good this year, of course, and they did have a nice bounce back with an easy win against Penn State. Excuse me. They're staying at home here. Nebraska, I mean, you could, I guess, make the argument they might look ahead to a Pacific Coast trip here and just not take Maryland that seriously. You pretty much know that Nebraska is going to be a little bit overvalued in the market, and that's really, I think, what you could say about this game. Asking them to lay 17 points down from 18 in a game like this where it might just be kind of a whatever effort for Nebraska in this one. Maryland, total is low, in the 140s, so that might mean points are a little bit more at a premium here, so that kind of makes it make sense to take points. The market read seems to be all over Maryland for the time being. 75% of the tickets are on Nebraska, 64% of the cash on Maryland. So do with that information what you want to. I guess for me, a slight lean, towards Maryland taking the points, but it also would not surprise me at all if Nebraska won that game handily. So, I mean, that's not something I want to get involved in at all. SEC Network at 7 p.m. Georgia at number 25, Vanderbilt. Georgia coming off a nice win over Texas after they beat Kentucky in the prior game in a nice road upset. So how much is Georgia going to have left in the tank is the question here, because I think Vandy is definitely in a fade spot in this game. It's just that I don't know if I love the setup for Georgia here. Georgia did get a nice win over Texas. Maybe they don't consider that to be that great of a win. They were 2.5-point favorites in that one. Georgia probably does need to continue to bolster the resume. They are playing a third road game in 4 games, which is not exactly that easy for them. Although going from, where's Georgia? Georgia's in Athens, right? So I think they're not that far away from Atlanta, I believe. Going up to Nashville, I believe, is where this is not going to be that ridiculous of a trip for them. Vandy is coming off a huge game against Tennessee, though, a massive rivalry game. They do have Kentucky on deck. Georgia is below them in the standings. Kentucky is above them in the standings. I think we pretty much know Vandy is a lock for the tournament anyway at this point, but I don't know if I could quite get there with the fade of Vandy, man. Like I said, this was close to being a play for me, and it would be on Georgia. I like Georgia in this one because I think Vandy coming off that monster game against Tennessee could set them up for a hangover, but this is their last home game, dude. Believe it or not, they have 3 games left, and they're all on the road. So, Vandy, they really don't want to be in a situation where they lose all of the remaining 4 games, and then they really have to do something in the SEC tournament. Although I think even if they do that, they're not going to be out of the tournament. They're going to be a 21-win SEC team. They already are, so I don't see them completely missing the tournament, but that would not be good, and the committee does weigh recency. Vandy's up from 8.5 to 9 here. It's expected to be a high-scoring game. I would lean to Georgia plus the points, but it's not a strong enough opinion for me to make my card, though. Vandy does play fast. Georgia also plays super fast, so I wouldn't really disagree with an over in this game either. Both teams, I think, are better on offense than defense. Yeah, especially Georgia does lack on the defensive side quite a bit. So, an over would not even though the total actually dropped significantly, a few points there, but the over would not be something I would disagree with in that one. The style, kind of makes the total there, although I'm not really a total guy. Totally. ESPNU at 7 p.m. We do have an interesting game in the Missouri Valley between Illinois State and Northern Iowa. These are 2 of the 3 teams that are tied 5 games back of Belmont right now. As I already said, Belmont has already clinched the 1 seed in the Missouri Valley tournament here, which doesn't mean as much. It means they get the maximum amount of buys in that tournament, but the top, 4 seeds in that tournament all get the same amount of buys, I'm pretty sure. And there's no home advantage because the whole tournament is in St. Louis, I believe. So, but Belmont has wrapped up the 1 seed. It's the best they could do, obviously. We have Illinois State and Northern Iowa battling to try to make it up. I think they both still have a chance at maybe getting a 2 seed here, but they need a lot of help. But they got to win this game. So they're battling for some seeding here. Illinois State's coming off an Illinois battle at Bradley, and now they're playing a 3rd road game in 4 games. The game wasn't that close against Bradley. They lost, but still 3rd road game in 4 games, coming off a big game, and they have Belmont to finish the season, hosting them at home. There's a possibility you don't get the greatest effort out of them here, and they did already beat Northern Iowa at home. So I kind of like Northern Iowa in this game. Although you're going to have to lay points with a team that really plays ugly games, man. I don't love the idea of laying points with Northern Iowa. They're just such an extreme defense-oriented team. They're like a really, really legit defense, but they can't score. Northern Iowa is coming off a pretty bad loss, though, at home to Southern Illinois, although I've been pointing out all year that Southern Illinois is not as bad as their record looks. But it looks like it should be a bounce-back spot for Northern Iowa. They get to host a game on ESPNU. Big game. It'll be a revenge for them, and it's their final home game, so they should be motivated for that reason. So I like Northern Iowa in this one, but this one's also not really strong enough for me. They're up from 5 to 5.5, and again, do you want to lay 5.5 with a total that opened in the 120s and now it's up into the low 130s? I don't know. I know 5 isn't really that much in in college basketball, because there are points scored in college basketball, but it's still like, I don't know. It feels like it feels like the margin for error here is not really that much. With a team like Northern Iowa that wins with their defense, like, I could definitely see them winning this game by a few points and not covering. Although it's probably likely that if they do win, they will cover still. But, yeah, that's what we got going on there. If you want me to talk about any of these other games, I guess I can. It's a matter of, trying to find motivation at this point in the season, see which teams still have anything to play for, some teams will kind of be locked into their seed. Like, I think Colgate is basically locked into the 2 seed in the Patriot. I don't know if they can fall behind American or Lehigh. I guess maybe they could, because they did lose 1 game to American, 1 game to Lehigh. Actually, they lost twice to Lehigh, so Lehigh definitely has the and they split with American. So Lehigh actually does have the tiebreaker. So with 2 games left, Colgate, I guess, could potentially actually still lose the they could lose the 2 seed still here. They got to play Lafayette here. They did already beat Lafayette, I think, at home. Yeah, by 8, or on the road, by 8 points. Lafayette, I guess, gets the chance to play spoiler here, but it is Colgate's final home game. But they do have Navy on deck, so they might look ahead to that because they probably want to test themselves against Navy, maybe get some revenge against Navy prior to getting into the tournament. Navy, of course, has run away with the Patriot League regular season title at this point, so Navy is not going to have anything left to play for at this point. Lafayette comes in off a pretty ugly home loss to American. Their final home game's on deck against Army, but I don't think they're going to overlook a game against Colgate. So I think I would lean to Lafayette in that one. Colgate is laying 8.5 with a fairly low total there. Seems like kind of a lot for Colgate to be laying just in general, although Lafayette's not a good team, so I don't know. I would lean slightly towards taking the points in that one. Keeping this thing going here, man. I'm just trying to find other games that I even had an opinion on today. Butler and Villanova on Fox Sports 1 at 7 p.m. It's a Big East matchup. I mean, not a whole lot of it. Not a whole lot about this interests me. Butler's coming off a win over Xavier at home, a fine win that will continue their momentum into this one. They already lost at home to Villanova by 18 points, so I think you will get an effort out of Butler here. Villanova is coming off the more difficult game. They did just play UConn, and they lost a long win streak, actually. They lost a 6-game win streak, and they have St. John's on deck. So, this one is probably as close as the game that we've talked about so far to being a play for me. I do like Butler in this game. And, as I look at it, I'm wondering if I should consider it. My hesitation with this one was that Villanova wasn't that close in this game against UConn. They played well for a half in the game, and then they really just fell apart in the second half, and the game was really pretty much a blowout, and that's kind of the thing. Villanova did not put in a max effort in this game by the end of it to keep it close. They were down almost 20 points pretty late in the game. They cut it to 10, but UConn probably just basically packed it in early because the game was over. You could make the argument it is still a sandwich, though. Villanova lost a long win streak. They had a game. They got up emotionally for it, hosting UConn, and they have St. John's on deck, which is a huge game. So this game is sandwiched in between the 2 best teams in the conference, and all of their losses in conference play, except for one, have been to those 2 teams. They did lose one game kind of inexplicably at home to Creighton. But besides that, all of their other 3 losses are to UConn and St. John's. So it is going to be a revenge game for them against St. John's up next. This game is a revenge game for Butler. Villanova might not take them seriously. Obviously, I would only lean towards Butler in this game. This one is definitely close to being a play for me. Villanova down from 10.5 to 9.5. Total's pretty low. Villanova likes to play slow, so laying points at home with Villanova a lot of times can get you in trouble. They're a balanced team this year, though, so that's the thing. Their offense is actually fairly good. But they're a lucky team, according to Ken Bum, 95th in luck. Butler is a lot less lucky, so I think Butler, a little bit of an undervalued team, although they're not as good on offense or defense, of course. They try to play a little bit faster, but Villanova will likely slow the game down and, try to save some of their energy. I just wish that Villanova, took UConn to overtime again or something so I could really jump in on Butler here. Again, I would still take the points with Butler there, and that one is as close as possible to being a play for me. I'm being very selective today. But I do like Butler in that game. All right. Navy at Loyola Maryland. Like I said, do not play Navy in this game, man. That's what I can say about this game. I mean, there's the chance they come in and they still win. But they already beat Loyola Maryland, who they're playing today, by 16 at home. Navy is coming off beating Colgate a few games back. They didn't have a letdown at all, and they crushed Lehigh. They beat Army on the road in the next Army-Navy matchup, which is still a rivalry. And they have a home game against Colgate to finish the season on deck, which that might be a game they might actually put in some effort just because it's their final home game, and they don't want to just slack, I think, in a final home game for the fans. So I don't like the spot for them in this game. This game would only be Loyola Maryland for me. Navy, again, they're going on the road to Loyola Maryland here. They have nothing left to play for, although, of course, it's a short trip. Both these teams are Maryland teams, but Navy's still laying 7.5 on the road, and they have absolutely nothing to play for here. So keep that in mind because they already have the 1 seed, so they have nothing to play for. I was going to give this out as a play, but the problem I have with Loyola Maryland is they just played a really huge game against Colgate. They just took Colgate to overtime on the road. That was a big deal for Loyola Maryland. Colgate's been one of the best teams in this conference for years, and they were 8.5-point underdogs. They took that game into overtime, so they're in a fade spot as well, coming off of a game like that. So I can't do it, even though I think Loyola Maryland will at least show up in this game, whereas Navy might not even show up. So there's no way that a team with zero motivation like Navy, or at least zero motivation that you can really pinpoint. There's no way they should actually be laying 7.5 in this one, in my opinion. So I would still take the points with Loyola Maryland, but unfortunately, I just can't do it because of their recent huge performance against Colgate. So, but yes, I would only take the points in that game still, though. And it's a fairly low total in that one. Navy, they're still a very lucky team, according to KenPom. 40th in his luck index, and they're really bad offensively. They're a good defensive team, but they don't score well. So that's not a good profile for laying a bunch of points on the road. CBS Sports at 7 p.m. Don't know how this game got scheduled for a national TV game in the Summit League here, but it did. Omaha at South Dakota. Very, very strange scheduling here. Although Omaha, they're playing for one of the top 4 seeds here, man. They might get one of the top 4 seeds. South Dakota doesn't have as much to South Dakota could advance their seeding. That's what they have to play for. I think Omaha, I don't think there are any buys in the Summit League tournament, though. I think the top 8 teams get in, and they just play a very simple 8-team tournament structure, I think. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that's true in the Summit League. I'm not 100% sure about that. But, yeah, South Dakota, I mean, if that is the case, they can't drop out of their positioning now. They can't fall out of the top 8. Omaha, let me see. They lost to South Dakota at home, believe it or not, earlier this year. So Omaha, they're in one of those situations where they were a pretty big favorite at home in the first game, and they lost. So I think you will get an effort out of Omaha here because they're trying to ensure that they get one of the top 4 seeds here. They're on a nice little 3-game win streak here, but they are having to go on the road. But still, I think because they lost at home to South Dakota, I think they will actually take them seriously here. Even though Omaha does have a big game on deck against St. Thomas, who is one of the top teams in the conference. South Dakota does have the chance to play spoiler here. They are back at home where they did lose their last home game, 2 home games to the 2 North Dakota teams. Although those teams, especially North Dakota State, North Dakota State's a pretty good team, the best team in the Summit. North Dakota is not really as good as their record makes them look. But South Dakota did lose those 2 games at home. So they might be motivated coming back home to get a good win here. But they do have their primary rival on deck at South Dakota State, although they already beat them on the road. But that will be their final home game on deck. But still, this is a rare situation, though, for South Dakota where they're hosting a game on primetime television. So even though it's a packed Wednesday card, So it's not one of these really isolated games. I think they might get up for the game a little bit more. Not only because they're on a 3-game losing streak, they're coming back home, they lost their last 2 home games, but also because they get a TV game here against the team that won the conference last year. So I would have a slight lean to Omaha. Just the road revenge angle kind of doing it for me there, and the fact that I think you will get an effort out of them for seeding, and they are the better team. And if you get the better team who didn't play well in the first matchup at home, that's a decent way to look in the second matchup. But there are some positives for South Dakota here, too, where I think they might show up as well. So that's not a game I want to get involved in, but that's your TV game there. What else do we have? We have a bunch of Horizon action that I just don't find that interesting at this point. Horizon, I don't believe anybody has wrapped up the Horizon yet, so just something to keep in mind. Wright State has almost wrapped up the Horizon, but that might mean that Wright State is going to be a little bit overvalued. They're playing at IPFW here. IPFW lost on the road to Wright State, so they might show up. It is IPFW's final home game here as well, coming back home for this. And Wright State might be a little bit overvalued because everybody pretty much knows that they get basically one more win, they're pretty much going to wrap up the conference. Wright State is down from 3.5 to 2.5. I would agree with that move and lean towards taking the points with IPFW in that one, because I think a team like Wright State that's basically win and you clinch the conference, like that puts a little bit of extra pressure on you. You know what I mean? It's like that win and you're in scenario where I think you tend to be a little bit overvalued in a scenario like that. Okay. Wofford and East Tennessee State. I kind of alluded to this game a little while ago. East Tennessee State has nothing to play for at this point because they already won the SoCon regular season, so they will have the 1 seed. That's going to be a neutral. I believe that's a neutral. Actually, is it? I don't remember. I think it is a neutral site tournament. I believe it is. I think they played in. I want to say they played in Greensboro. I forget. Somewhere in North Carolina, I think. I forget. Wofford is the only team that has motivation in this game, so I would have to lean their way, but I don't think I can get there with Wofford because they are coming off that pretty big game against Furman, who is right behind them in the standings. Wofford is tied in second place pretty much with Mercer right now, so Wofford is trying to get the 2 seed here, which would help their bye structure in the tournament. But they're coming off a big game against Furman, man. So I don't know. They're definitely going to show up for this game mentally, but they got to put in another big effort here after that game against Furman. But it was a loss, so maybe they will kind of be in bounce back mode here. They lost at home to East Tennessee already. So East Tennessee, I think, really is going to be unmotivated here, man. East Tennessee, they're playing out the stretch here. They already beat Wofford on the road, like I said. They've already clinched the 1 seed. I guess one issue you might have with fading East Tennessee here is this is their final home game, so they probably don't want to just completely throw in the towel in this game, you know what I mean? Because the fans are going to show up, and they want to send the seniors off in a decent way. So they are still laying 8 points here because, again, the odds makers kind of have to do that and line the game as an ordinary game for the most part because you don't really know what effort you're going to get out of this team. I would still take the points with Wofford if I was going to play that game, but I have some reservations about it, just like with everything on the board today. We do have Evansville at Belmont. Like I said, Belmont has already clinched the 1 seed in the Missouri Valley. They're on a win streak here. They're coming off a win against Indiana State. Now they're playing this atrocious Evansville team. They already beat Evansville on the road, although only by 5. So Evansville actually covered. So I guess you could argue that Belmont will take them a little bit more seriously because Evansville gave them a little bit of a scare when they played them on the road, and Belmont were double-digit favorites in that game. Belmont are massive favorites in this game, and they do have a TV game to finish the season against Illinois State where I don't really know how much effort they're going to put into that game either because, again, they are going to start looking forward to the conference tournament, although I don't think they want to just completely pack it in yet either because you don't want to go into the conference tournament, rusty either, so there's kind of that trade-off there. But are you going to get a good enough effort from Belmont to cover a 20-point spread here? I would not lay it. There's no way that I would lay it in a team that has extremely questionable motivation and laying that many points, as bad as Evansville is. But it is Belmont's final home game, so they'll probably still win the game. They'll probably show up with enough effort to win the game, but I would only take Evansville plus the points if I was going to do anything with the spread. Belmont up to 20.5 with juice from 19, so initial line move on Belmont, which is pretty insane, to be honest. But, yeah, that's what we got going on in that game. All right. True TV, 7:30 p.m. Xavier is at Providence. Xavier on a 2-game losing streak here. They just played okay in those 2 games against Villanova and then at Butler. I don't know how big of an underdog they were against Butler. They actually failed to cover by a half point against Butler, but I don't think the teams are really caring to that degree, like a half point one way or the other. What matters is if they're a huge underdog and they played close, then that takes a lot of effort. But Xavier might show up, but it is a second straight road game here. They did already beat Providence at home, though, so Providence does have a revenge motivator here. As far as the Big East tournament, I forget how many teams make the tournament, so I don't know if the last couple of teams get left out of the tournament. So these 2 teams would be playing to avoid missing the tournament entirely if that's the case, because these 2 teams are only a half game above the last place teams, which are Georgetown and Marquette. Interestingly, in the Big East, the worst teams in the Big East really are not that terrible, I guess, but, you know, it's a very mediocre conference overall. There's Rick Pitino in the game with all the brawls against Providence. That was ridiculous. Providence did just beat DePaul on the road, coming back home from that. It is their second to last home game. This is a difficult read. There's nothing that I really get out of this handicap that I can figure out one way or the other. The money is currently indicating on Xavier for what that's worth. Providence down from 6.5 to 6 here. 50% of the tickets, 89% of the cash on Xavier. It's a pretty high total at 170, and I probably would not disagree with an over in this game. Providence plays super fast. They don't play any defense. Xavier also plays fast and is pretty weak defensively as well. Both teams are actually really weak defensively by like Big East standards. So both teams better on offense. So I would not disagree with an over in that matchup, which is why that total is so high. Okay. Keeping this thing going here, man. Again, if you want me to mention any of these other games, I guess I can, but I don't think we have any other situations where there are teams that have clinched their conference at this point. I think I already hit all of those. ACC Network at 8 p.m., Pitt at Stanford. Pitt is having to go out to the West Coast, which you know I talk about how difficult that is, especially if it's a late night game, although this one's not as late. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern, but still, you're playing pretty late on your biological clock and having to travel cross country. So that's not that easy to do. Although the good thing for Pitt is they have positive momentum because they beat Notre Dame in their last game and they ended a 5-game losing streak. So they come into this game with momentum and maybe they will show up because it is against a team that has a record that's better than theirs. For the Big East tournament, or excuse me, ACC, why did Big East? I'm so used to Pitt being in the Big East. I'm that old, man. For the ACC tournament, I don't remember how many teams get left out of the tournament. So, I mean, I don't know. These teams do have some seeding to play for here, I guess. Stanford is coming off their big rivalry game against Cal, though. They did lose. They were coming back to the Pacific Coast. I think both teams are flying cross country back to the Pacific Coast for that. But that's a big game, Stanford, Cal. They're rivals. Stanford fell short in that game. And they do have a big game on deck against SMU, who is probably going to be a tournament team. So you could make the argument this is a little bit of a sandwich spot for Stanford here. So, yeah, I mean, I probably do lean Pitt in this game. They're going to be an underdog here. No, I don't want to bookmark this. Stanford's up to an 8-point favorite, and the total is low in the 130. So I think I would probably actually take the points with Pitt there, but pretty weird spot having to travel cross country this late in the season. I think it'll be the first time Pitt is doing that, so I don't exactly love that. Keeping it going, Central Arkansas and Austin Peay is a pretty interesting one in the A-Sun because these are the two teams that are still in the running for winning the ASUN regular season title. Austin Peay has a 2-game lead over Central Arkansas right now. I believe if Central Arkansas wins this game and then beats Queens, because this is the only game that they play against Austin Peay, I believe that would give them the tiebreaker. They would have to win both games, and Austin Peay would have to lose both games. But Central Arkansas still has the chance to get the regular season title. They hurt their chances, though, on Saturday with a pretty ugly loss in overtime to Florida Gulf Coast. And they kind of got screwed, dude. I watched the end of that game. Central Arkansas had the game wrapped up in regulation. I think there was some weird foul call or something at the end of regulation that helped Gulf Coast extend the game. Something weird happened, and I can't remember exactly what happened. Central Arkansas, I didn't like them in that spot, though. I thought they would be looking ahead to Austin Peay here. But the setup for Central Arkansas is not exactly great because they did just lose a long win streak. They had a really long win streak snapped. It was like a 10 or 11 game win streak or something like that. And I talk about when a team has a really long win streak like that snapped, a lot of times that will hang them over into the next game, and they'll lose the game twice essentially. And it's a third road game in a row, which is not easy to do. But I think the motivation shouldn't really be in question because, again, they do have the chance still to potentially get the ASUN title here. And Austin Peay does have the 2-game lead here, so Austin Peay could theoretically lose this game and still win the conference. They probably should beat Bellarmine in their final game, but they probably don't want to have to let it come down to that, a road game. This is their final home game, so I do think Austin Peay is going to show up in this game. They played a couple of lackluster road games at North Florida and at Jacksonville, having to go down to Florida. Those teams are not that good. Austin Peay barely got by both of them, especially North Florida. They had a massive escape. I showed you how that game ended. I played the video, which is still there. It was crazy. Basically, they had to chuck it the length of the court, and they had a tipped ball go into their player's hands with 1 second left, and he was able to throw it up towards the basket before the clock expired, and it went in. Absolute insanity in that one. But I think Austin Peay will show up after those scares. They are back at home in Tennessee. Of course, they are in a situation where if they win, they clinch the 1 seed here. So it's one of those situations where they might be a little bit of an overvalued team because of that. 3.5 is not a ton to be laying with them at home, though, and I would probably still lean to Austin Peay in that one. But again, you're laying a little bit much with a team that, win an in scenario, like it still like fucks you mentally, like if we win, we clinch the conference, and then you just get, you start harping on that, you know what I mean? Whereas Central Arkansas can kind of play looser because nobody really even expected them to be here at all. But I don't like the fact that they lost that really long win streak. Getting into the 9 p.m., Portland at Gonzaga. This is a revenge game for Gonzaga, as crazy as that sounds. Everybody probably remembers Gonzaga lost inexplicably at Portland as, I think, 22-point favorites or something like that in that game. And now they're only 26-point favorites at home. So believe it or not, I think there might actually be line value on Gonzaga here. And this is their final home game. And because they lost at Portland, I don't think they're going to overlook Portland this time. But it is still a scenario where Gonzaga might start looking ahead because they have a huge game on deck against St. Mary's. They already beat St. Mary's once, but they're still only 1 game ahead of St. Mary's, so that game does have implications as far as who's going to get the 1 seed here, and it is like always Gonzaga for the most part in recent years. So that's the worry here, that Gonzaga is going to want to win this game because they know they lost to Portland, but are they going to be that motivated to win this game in an absolute blowout? Maybe not. Like, it might get into a situation where they're up 20 points late in the game and they start looking ahead and just take their foot completely off the gas and they just win this game by, somewhere in the teens. Like, I could definitely see a scenario where that happens here. So I can't lay the points here with Gonzaga. It's just a ton of points. Even though I do think it's maybe not even enough if this game was just in a vacuum. Like, Gonzaga is the way, way better team here, but Portland also will still get up for a game against Gonzaga, though. They've lost 3 games in a row. It is a third road game in 4 games for them, though, which is not easy to do. But, they'll still probably try to get up for a game against the team that's always at the top of this conference. So it's not like they're going to lack in motivation. It's just that Gonzaga is the way better team. So how full of an effort are you going to get from them here? Well, again, the worry is that they have St. Mary's on deck, so you might not get a full effort out of Gonzaga. I could see Gonzaga coming out. This is what I would probably do with this game. I would probably lay the points with Gonzaga in the first half because I think they're probably going to show up. They played some easy game in their previous game. I think they're going to come into this game. Oh, yeah, we remember Portland beat us. Gonzaga's probably going to come out with some fire to just stick it to Portland early on. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to beat us this time. But then second half, I could see them starting to look ahead. You know what I mean? Once they know this game is in hand, let's not continue to put in a bunch of energy. We got to save some for St. Mary's. So I'm not really a halves guy, but Gonzaga first half would probably be the way I would play this game. They're laying 27 in the game, by the way. So first half is probably 14 is probably the line in the first half, which I know gets a little bit dicey. 14 is a lot to ask in one half. But there is definitely a chance that they're just blowing Portland out in the first half. All right. Or I guess the other way to play it is I don't even know if you could find a line on this, but you could get super granular and go Gonzaga first half over their team total. I don't even know how many books even offer that, if any, but I could see that being maybe a way to look at that game too. ESPNU at 9 p.m. Mississippi State is at number 17, Alabama. Mississippi State, they did play. Mississippi State did lose at home to Alabama, so Alabama might not take Mississippi State seriously at all because they're not having a good season, and Alabama already beat them on the road once by double digits. Mississippi State is coming off a pretty ugly loss at South Carolina. So I expect effort out of Mississippi State here. They're not a great team this year, though, and they are playing a third road game in 4 games, which is not the greatest scenario. Alabama, unfortunately, they're not coming off that. If they were coming off that Arkansas game, you better believe I would give you Mississippi State as a play here. The problem is, after that Arkansas game, Alabama already played the next game, and they went to LSU, and they won and did not cover, I believe. They almost covered. I think they came within a half point of covering. They won the game at LSU, even though they were in a major letdown spot. So now they're coming off of kind of a questionable performance at LSU, which was explainable because that was a massive double overtime game against Arkansas the game before that I thought might have wiped Alabama out, and they still almost covered against LSU. Now, the one major negative for Alabama here still is that those games took a lot of effort to do, and they have Tennessee on deck. In fact, their remaining 3 games are all bigger than this one. They got ranked Tennessee on deck, which is a revenge game as well because Tennessee beat them at Alabama already. Then they have Georgia, who's looking like they're going to be a tournament team, and then Auburn, which is a huge Alabama rivalry game. So every one of the remaining games is more meaningful than this one against Mississippi State. So Mississippi State is the side in this game. It's not on my card, but I would have to lean to Mississippi State here. It's a really high total, 175.5. Alabama down to a 14.5 point favorite here from 15.5. So some money has come in agreement with me on this. Alabama doesn't play very good defense. Mississippi State, believe it or not, does play fast this year as well, although their defense is actually better than their offense on Mississippi State. So you're getting the more defense-oriented team with Mississippi State, even though their defense is still actually worse than Alabama's. Alabama's just a way, way better offense there. But yes, I would take the points, but it's, a little bit difficult to take the points with the spot, not being horrible enough, I don't think, for Alabama, and with the fact that Alabama might be able to score enough to still win that game by that margin. That kind of thing worries me a little bit. Mississippi State might actually come in and try to play slow in that game. Who knows, man? So I don't know if I'd want to go over in that particular game, although the money has come in towards the over, and the total's way high at 175.5. But you're looking at a Mississippi State team that is actually better on defense than offense at the very least, and their defense is almost as good as Alabama's, although good is relative. ESPN2 at 9 p.m., Texas A&M at number 20, Arkansas. Texas A&M, not as good as they looked when they started out, but it looks like they are probably going to make the tournament at this point, but this would go a long way, man. Beating Arkansas would go a long way, although they do have other opportunities at home against Texas and Kentucky. I think if they're going to make the tournament, they better get at least one win in that 3-game stretch there, man. Maybe 2. We'll see. This one's going to be difficult. They got to go to Arkansas for this one. A&M is coming off a couple of close wins against Ole Miss and Oklahoma, so they do at least have some momentum coming into this one. Arkansas is coming off a win over Missouri that was, not a huge win for them, but they do have a huge game on deck against Florida. So Arkansas might look ahead to Florida. That's, I guess, the main concern with Arkansas' scheduling spot there. I would lean slightly towards Texas A&M. This is another game with a crazy high total in the 170s. Both these teams are going to play fast, so I wouldn't really disagree with an over in this one. Arkansas is up to an 8-point favorite there. I lean towards taking the points as well, but, a high total like that makes that a bit iffier. Arkansas is not coming off a big game, so I don't love it, really. Arkansas is a great offense, top 5 offense, and not a very good defense at all, outside the top 50, and they play fast. Texas A&M is also better on offense than defense, although they are more balanced, but they also play fast. So, yeah, an over does still make sense in that game to me, just based on the style that those teams play. Fox Sports 1, a lot of games with high totals today, man. Fox Sports 1 at 9 p.m. Kansas State is at Colorado. Kansas State having to go into elevation for this one. Kansas State playing like a team that doesn't care at this point. They fired their coach not that long ago, and it didn't really give them that much of a boost, really. They just got destroyed by Texas Tech. So maybe they will show up with more effort after giving up 100 points and getting blown out. Maybe they'll give you a better effort here, but going into elevation, 3rd road game in 4 games, not going to be that easy. Colorado is staying at home. They just beat Oklahoma State, which is a decent win, though. And they do have Houston on deck, which might be a look ahead for Colorado, with not a whole lot left for Colorado to play for during the season here. These teams are going to have to do something. If they make the Big 12 tournament, which I think most of the teams do, they're going to have to make noise in the tournament to really, do anything. They're going to have to put themselves in position to shock and win the conference tournament. So not a whole lot of motivation here as far as that's concerned. I think Colorado's in the somewhat worse spot, as far as what they just came off of, what they're looking ahead to. I worry a little bit about the travel for Kansas State here, but I probably would take the points with Kansas State in that one. Colorado's a 7-point favorite. Big Ten Network at 9 p.m., Ohio State at Iowa. This one was in consideration for making my cut. It just doesn't quite get there, man. Ohio State, look at the run of games they're coming off of. They just played Virginia close, then they beat Wisconsin, then they went to Michigan State, and they played them to within 6 points. And they're coming off of those 3 games. Those are monster effort games for Ohio State, man. One concern I do have is that the game was actually put away against Michigan State. They were down 10 with a minute and a half left, so they didn't take Michigan State right to the wire. But the game was still close with about 4 minutes to go. And they're coming off of all of that, having to go to Iowa. And they got Purdue on deck, which might be a big game. Although Ohio State, they're a bubble team, man, so they can't really lose to anybody, and they're tied with Iowa in the standings. So I think there is still a motivating factor here for Ohio State. So that's kind of one reason why I can't really jump in on this, because I do like Iowa in this game. Iowa is coming off that loss to Wisconsin, where I gave you guys Wisconsin in that one. Wisconsin had to pull away late in the game, but they were able to do it. So Iowa is coming off a game where it was close until 6 minutes left in the game, and then Wisconsin just completely pulled away. Back at home, maybe Iowa will give you a better effort here. I would lean that way just because, Iowa is coming off some big games too, though, against Purdue. Then they beat Nebraska. Then they played close most of the way against Wisconsin. So those are kind of my hesitations there. I lean Iowa, but I don't love this. Let me see. Where's Iowa at? They're off from 5.5 to 6 with juice, maybe 6.5 already there. So some of the money has come in on Iowa. As we know, though, Iowa plays slow. Total in the 140s, so they're not exactly a team I really love laying points with. Still it's a game that's a stay away from me. Yeah, this is just a bad board today, man. I am bored by it. What else can I say? CBS Sports at 9 p.m. We have UNLV at Grand Canyon. UNLV did actually beat Grand Canyon at home already, so there is a little bit of a revenge angle for Grand Canyon here. I believe this was a close line in this game. Grand Canyon was actually a road favorite. So, that is somewhat of an angle that you can use, or Grand Canyon lost as a road favorite. That means they should give an effort at home here. And Grand Canyon gets to host a TV game, so I think they will get up for a game like that. UNLV is coming off an easy win over Air Force, though, so they probably won't overlook Grand Canyon, but there is the chance that they do, because look at their remaining games, dude. They played their rival in revenge on Nevada next, and then they have the top two teams in the conference, basically, with Utah State and San Diego State. So I guess you could make the argument it is a look ahead here, even though Grand Canyon is ahead of them in the standings. Those remaining games are big, and they already beat Grand Canyon once. Grand Canyon, I think you're going to get an effort out of them, because they lost to UNLV already, and they're coming off a pretty ugly loss at home to Wyoming as a pretty big favorite. But I told you I did not like Grand Canyon in that game. I liked Wyoming. It almost made my card. Grand Canyon lost as a 7.5-point favorite in that one. They were coming off a huge win over San Diego State on the road in a big upset, and they had this revenge game against UNLV on deck and Utah State after that. So I think Grand Canyon was looking ahead. The only way that I could play this game is Grand Canyon. This one is actually probably one of the stronger opinions of the day, to be honest. They're up to 7.5 with juice, 7.5 or 8. I would lay it with Grand Canyon in this one. That's how I look at that game. The total's not particularly low in that game, so you might get enough points scored for them to do that. But I don't know, man. It's just still, I don't love it enough. DePaul at Creighton on Peacock. Big East, not the most enticing Big East matchup. DePaul actually beat Creighton already at home, right? I believe DePaul might have been a 1-point favorite in that game. They won, I think, by right around what the number was. They're 1.5-point underdogs, actually, or 1-point underdogs. DePaul is coming off a loss to Providence at home, though. But going on the road to Creighton, having to go to Omaha, they did already beat Creighton, like I said, so Creighton might show up with a little bit of effort in this one, because it is a revenge game, and Creighton just got absolutely trounced by St. John's. But they were coming off a monster win. I told you I liked St. John's. I'm kind of mad I didn't put that on my card. Like Creighton coming off that win over Connecticut, they just had nothing left in the tank against St. John's. They got absolutely destroyed coming off that monster win. But now they're coming off a blowout loss. So back at home, I do expect them to show up with more effort. Their last home game was a pretty bad effort against Villanova. They lost by double digits. At home, on TV, in revenge, coming off a blowout loss. Creighton would be the way I would lean in this game. They're a 5-point favorite. Which, by the way, if they're 1-point favorites on the road, they probably should be a little bit heavier of a favorite here. 67% of tickets, 98% of the cash on them. I agree with the money in that one. It would be Creighton for me in that game. Not on my card, though. SEC Network, LSU at Ole Miss. A more interesting football matchup than basketball matchup. LSU has lost a bunch of games in a row, 5 in a row, so maybe you will get an effort out of them here. I don't believe these teams have played this year. But, LSU did put in a decent effort in that game against Alabama, and they covered barely in that game. So maybe, you could argue that maybe it's a little bit of a hangover spot here. For Ole Miss, they're at home, and they're coming off a blowout loss to Florida, staying at home, hosting a home game here. Ole Miss did drop from 3 to 1.5, but I kind of lean slightly towards Ole Miss in that game. If it's at 1.5, it would be a money line play. But, yeah, I don't really have a strong feel for that game at all. ACC Network at 10 p.m., SMU at Cal. SMU, a Central Time Zone team, having to go to the Pacific Coast and play a late-night game. I'm going to talk about it again. It messes with your biological clock, and they haven't been out there this year, I don't think. Although, actually, I don't know. Maybe they were for some of these weird neutral site games. Nope, they played Fullerton at SMU. Yeah, so I don't know, but this is going to be, a travel starter. They do have to go out to the Pacific Time Zone here. SMU, I guess you could make the argument this is still a bubble battle of some kind, because SMU trying to ensure they get into the tournament, but I think they will be in at this point based on their resume. If they get one more win, they're a 20-win team, and that's likely to happen at some point, I think, even though they do have 3 of their remaining games are on the road here out of their remaining 4. But Cal is more of a bubble team in need of a win. They're behind SMU in the standings. Cal is actually like the last ACC team sort of on the tournament picture right now with Virginia Tech and then kind of behind them now, even though Cal lost to Virginia Tech already. Cal is coming off a big rivalry win over Stanford, though. So that's kind of the concern with Cal there, is that they're coming off a big win. It's a difficult game to handicap for me. The money has come in on SMU. They're up from 2 to 3.5. I think it was 4, and it started to come back down a little bit. So I just don't know what to do with this game. We don't really see the percentages yet, but 67% of the cash on SMU. They might be a public side. I probably lean slightly towards Cal in that one, even though I know they are coming off a rivalry win. But getting points at home in kind of a weird travel spot for SMU, Cal, I think, might have a little bit more of a motivating factor there, trying to come from out of nowhere to get a tournament berth from out of nowhere. I don't know. 11 p.m. ESPNU, Washington State at Loyola Marymount. Don't know why this game is on TV. Washington State beat Loyola Marymount at home by 2 earlier this year. So Washington State did not cover, but they're only 3.5-point favorites in that one. So I don't know if that means they're going to take Loyola Marymount seriously or not. Washington State already played their final home game and lost to St. Mary's, which was a game that you get up for against St. Mary's. Just Washington State's not good enough to hang. Loyola Marymount is coming off a road win against San Diego, and now they're coming back home to play Washington State in revenge. So there is that, even though they played Washington State close. I think I'd probably have to lean towards Loyola Marymount here. I mean, they don't usually get to host host TV games like this. So Washington State has flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite, but I think I'd probably lean Loyola Marymount in that one. But no real strong opinion on that one at all. Excuse me. Santa Clara at St. Mary's on CBS Sports. This is a great game, dude. This is one of the best games of the day. These teams are fighting each other for second place in the West Coast Conference right now. Potentially first place, I guess. Although Santa Clara, I think, has already lost twice to Gonzaga. So they don't have a tiebreaker against Gonzaga. So I don't think they can get first place. Well, they can if Gonzaga loses 2 games, they can. But I don't think that's going to happen. Santa Clara, this is a big game for both teams. Maybe bigger for St. Mary's, though, because Santa Clara already beat St. Mary's once at home, so they currently have the tiebreaker against St. Mary's. I don't know who would if St. Mary's wins this game. It's going to be a big game. Like, this game is pretty much going to determine who gets second place in the West Coast Conference. And I believe you get an extra bye if you're one of the top 2 teams in the conference, so it is a big deal. Santa Clara is coming off a very satisfying win on the road at San Francisco, which that was a loss for me. I thought it was a bad spot because Santa Clara had a huge game against Gonzaga the game prior to that and hung in that game for a decent stretch of it. Didn't lose by that much. And they had this huge St. Mary's game on deck. So I'm surprised they played that well against San Francisco, which does tell you they're a good team. And they are still fighting for, like, bubble positioning in the tournament. But I think if Santa Clara loses this game to St. Mary's, it won't knock them out of the tournament completely. If they win, I think then that, like, pretty much seals the deal, and they will get a tournament berth. Now, for St. Mary's, they're coming in with momentum here. They've won a bunch of games in a row. 6 games in a row, in fact, with a loss to Gonzaga prior to that. It's revenge for St. Mary's, so I think motivation shouldn't be in question here. They will show up trying to get revenge on Santa Clara. But for St. Mary's, they do have Gonzaga on deck, and that's always a massive game as well. But I don't think they're going to overlook St. Mary's. And the setup for or overlook Santa Clara, excuse me. The setup for St. Mary's kind of sucks coming into that game against Gonzaga because St. Mary's is going to be coming off of this huge game and then having to play a Gonzaga team that probably can win without a lot of effort against Portland tonight. So St. Mary's does have the money in this one. They're down from 5.5 to 4.5, but 67% of tickets, 84% of the cash on them. I don't disagree. I would probably lean towards laying it with St. Mary's in the revenge spot there. It's going to be a really good game. I think both these teams are about even in KenPom, I think, as far as where they are ranking-wise. St. Mary's is a little bit higher. Only 9 ranking spots higher, though, interestingly. St. Mary's is the better defense. Santa Clara is the better offense. And I do usually prefer the better defense, but I prefer the better defense as an underdog and that's not the case here. Both teams are similar in luck, although St. Mary's is luckier, according to KenPom. Now, there is a huge pacing contrast, though. Santa Clara might have been able to win that game at home because they speed the game up. This game, St. Mary's might be able to slow it down and frustrate Santa Clara, because St. Mary's definitely wants to slow the pace way down. So that is something they might be able to accomplish in that game as the home favorite. Big Ten Network at 11 p.m., Wisconsin at Oregon. Wisconsin having to go out to the Pacific Coast here. Kind of a weird spot for them to have to do that. Coming off a nice win over Iowa. That was a pretty big win for Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I mean, they're already going to have a tournament berth. I mean, they beat Michigan. You know, they're one win away from having 20 wins. They're going to make the tournament in some capacity. Oregon has not a whole lot left to play for, man. This is their second to last home game, and they get to face a tournament team in Wisconsin here. Oregon is coming off an upset, and I don't usually like playing teams coming off an upset, but that was against USC. It was a road upset, but USC has not been playing well. Maybe Oregon will have some confidence coming back home here. And I do think Oregon is a bit of an unlucky team, according to KenPom. They might come in and try to muddy this thing up and slow Wisconsin down. Wisconsin being a fast-paced team now probably doesn't want that to be the case. Wisconsin down from 6.5 to 5 here. I would lean towards taking the points with Oregon in that one. It also looks way too easy to lay the points with Wisconsin. Like, what's up with that line, right? Like, Oregon has such a terrible record, but the odds makers are telling you they're not as bad as their record looks. Even though KenPom does have them outside the top 100, he does have them in the bottom 60 or so in luck. So they're an unlucky team, Oregon. And then Fox Sports 1, really good game here, too. One of the better games of the night, Utah State at San Diego State. I think the motivation might be more on the San Diego State side in this one, so I do lean that way. Utah State's in first place in the Mountain West. They're going to make the tournament, man, as an at-large. I think even at this point, if they don't win the Mountain West tournament, which they may not, I think they get in anyway. They're on a nice roll, though they did just lose to Nevada, but that ended a long win streak for Utah State. An 8-game win streak. And you know what I always talk about? When a team loses a long win streak, a lot of times they'll be hung over into the next game. And they're having to travel from Reno to San Diego here, which is not that easy of a thing to do. They already beat San Diego State, even though, yeah, this is a huge game. San Diego State's only one game behind Utah State and threatening to take over the top spot in the conference again. From a tournament perspective, it won't matter that much as far as the Mountain West tournament because it's a neutral location in Vegas, and the top two teams get the same amount of buys anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. It'll determine who they're playing, though, in the tournament. So getting the 1 seed, I guess you get to avoid New Mexico if that happens, the way it would be set up right now. But I don't know how big of a deal that is at this point if these teams really care about something that's multiple games down the road. They don't play 5D chess here, man. But Utah State, I could see them being hung over after losing a long win streak. They already beat San Diego State once. They do have Grand Canyon on deck, which is, believe it or not, a revenge game because Grand Canyon beat them at Grand Canyon. Again, I don't really think they're going to overlook San Diego State, but I think San Diego State, the game matters more to them for multiple reasons. And one is that they already lost once to Utah State. Another is that San Diego State is a bubble team right now. Like, Utah State is likely to get into the tournament, even if they lose 1 or 2 more games. I think they could probably lose 3 more games and they would still get in. Maybe 2. For San Diego State, they're also on a 2-game skid. Losing at home to Grand Canyon is a big favorite. That was a bad game. And then I thought they were in a bad spot after that, going to Colorado State, because they'd already beaten Colorado State with ease. And they had this huge game on deck against Utah State and New Mexico after this on CBS. So I think they got caught in a look ahead. Colorado State's been a hot team. San Diego State's coming off that loss. 2 pretty bad losses in a row, really, though. So I expect a lot of effort from San Diego State in this one. I like San Diego State here. Where are they at? They're at a pick'em. I would money line. Well, I would look at both markets, right? Like, if you find a pick'em price that's better, do that. If you find a money line price that's better, do that. That's the way I would play this game. San Diego State is my lean in that game. You know, as far as, like, what do I think are the strongest plays in college basketball today? Oh, God. You know, I mean, I like San Diego State for sure. What are the other ones I mentioned? Iowa, maybe. Creighton. Let me see. What are the ones that I even mentioned? Mississippi State, I guess, maybe makes that list. I don't know. You guys might have to just – hopefully you guys watched my whole breakdown there and you remember what I was saying. There's aren't that many that I really love today. Butler was actually one of them. Villanova being in a pretty big sandwich spot there. Yeah, so none of them quite make my cut, man. But, yeah, I think those are the ones that I like the most out of all of these. So do with that information what you want to, I guess. Yeah, I think that would be my short list there is those four I just mentioned, I think. Yeah, it's crazy looking at how awful this slate is to me, man. All right. We're going to go to NBA. Actually, we'll go to NHL because NHL is back, and then we'll do NBA to finish this off. It's a short NBA card, and the NBA is where I have a play, so I usually do it in that order anyway, but let me I'll take a quick break here. I'll be right back, and you guys can look at the NHL board while I come back, and maybe you will be bored, but we'll talk about NHL in a second. All right, NHL here. NHL has returned, man, from the long Olympic break, and I'll repeat what I said about like the All-Star break with the NBA. I treat it like a bye, basically, like a football bye, where I think that having a break can disrupt whatever momentum you had going into the break. So if a team was really hot going into the break, I think it's a negative, and I think it could stop their momentum, and you want to look to fade them coming out of the break. But if a team was on a really bad stretch going into the break, I think the break can help them, and they use it to fix things, and they actually focus, and they can come out with more focus. So I like to be on those teams generally. Now, one thing I will say that I forgot to mention about the NBA in the second day that play has resumed, because there are going to be teams on back-to-backs tomorrow, and you have to treat that back-to-back differently than you do like when you're in the middle of the season. A back-to-back is usually bad, right, because there's no rest. But the back-to-back after a huge break, like teams that play tonight, some of these teams like New Jersey, I think, is one. They're going to play again tomorrow. It's not necessarily going to be a bad thing that they're playing a back-to-back, because it's a team that has all this rest because they've been on a huge break. So playing back-to-back isn't as bad of a thing. And a lot of times the team that has that one game under their belt already plays better. And that's something that I talk about like in the tournament picture and whatever. Like, it's very counterintuitive, but like a team having a tournament game under their belt already, that's why these teams that play in like the play-in games in the tournament or whatever, they actually do pretty well historically in the first game in the round of 64, because they already have a game out of the way under their belt, and they have that momentum coming into the next game. You know what I mean? So, like, if a team wins today and it's not like a monster win or anything, and they have to play again tomorrow, it actually might be a positive because they shed the rust. You know what I mean? Now you've played, you got to win, you got some momentum now. So that's the way you got to look at that second game. So we'll talk about that type of scenario tomorrow. But first game up is Buffalo at New Jersey. Well, you know, the first thing I kind of thought was, well, New Jersey has Jack Hughes, and he has been the guy that's being talked about because, you know, he broke his teeth in the Olympic gold medal game there, had the game-winning goal, so everybody's talking about him. Does that mean he's going to be in, like, a personal letdown spot here because he plays for New Jersey. Maybe, but I don't know if that's going to affect the entire team that way. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't rely just on that part of the handicap. No, absolutely not. The first four is a terrible idea to begin with. Those teams should not be playing for a high seed. That's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way they could do that because the whole point of the first four is you barely got into the tournament. So you have to be playing for like a lower seed. If anything, what they should do is they should have all the worst teams playing for like 16 and 15 seeds or whatever, or have play-ins for all the 16 seeds, is what they should do. It should be like pretty much meaningless, but it gives those like small teams like a chance to play on a national stage. So that I think that's really what they should do. Playing for a high seed is absolutely ridiculous. It would be unbelievably disruptive to the tournament. It makes no fucking sense at all. Like, you earn your high seed by doing really well during the season, and those high seeds should be the best teams. So no, absolutely not. The first four shouldn't even be a thing at all, really. Buffalo at New Jersey. Now, as far as what I just said about Hughes, I don't think that New Jersey is going to be in like in a mode where it's going to be some sort of letdown mode or something like that because they're playing Buffalo here, and Buffalo's got a good record. So I don't think New Jersey is going to come into this game overlooking Buffalo. Buffalo, though, they did go into the break on 2 losses, including one against Pittsburgh. You could see why they lost that game, though, because they had a huge overtime game against Tampa the game before that and beat Florida the game before that on the road. They were returning home, playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. So the setup for them against Pittsburgh was terrible. I don't know if I gave out Pittsburgh as a play in that game or not, but that was a horrible spot. So Buffalo, you can explain that loss. Having the break might help them refocus, come out with some effort here. One problem is they do have a big game they have 3 big games on deck, really, against Florida, Tampa, Vegas. So they might overlook a kind of mediocre New Jersey team here. I think New Jersey should show up because they went into the break on a bad stretch as well. They lost 3 games in a row. They were not playing good hockey, so maybe the break will help them coming into this one, and they don't have a bigger game on deck. So how do we handicap this game? Well, it's pretty difficult, to be honest. The market read is saying New Jersey here. Buffalo up from -105 to -108. 80% of the tickets, 69% of the cash on them. So Buffalo is a very public side. Looks too easy to play Buffalo. So the market read is saying New Jersey, but I really don't think it's a bad spot for Buffalo, though, unless you think they're going to be looking ahead, which I guess is possible. But the fact that they went into the break on a negative note, I don't really think they're going to overlook this game. So that's my concern there. I guess market read is saying New Jersey. I don't even know if I want to say I slightly lean that way or not. It's just it's a game I don't want anything to do with. Philadelphia at Washington. Philadelphia went into the break on a loss to Ottawa, which is not great. They were actually on a pretty bad run of losing 5 of their last 6 games. So that might be a helpful break for them. However, they're playing the one team they beat during that stretch, Washington. They beat on February 3rd, and that's who they're playing here. So there may be a little bit of a revenge motive for Washington here. Washington did go into the break on a win, but it was only against Nashville. But they did win 4 of their last 5. And they do have Vegas on deck, but I'm not sure they're going to overlook the last team that beat them prior to the break, which is Philadelphia. So Washington might show up for that reason. So that's my concern with this game. There are conflicting factors here because I think momentum-wise favors Philadelphia coming into this because they could use that break more effectively. But the revenge scenario for Washington is not to be overlooked, and the money is actually coming in on Washington. 52% of tickets, 80% of the cash on Washington. They're down from -160 to -150. I probably agree with Washington in that one, but it's not a strong opinion. TNT, HBO Max, True TV has a doubleheader here. Not televising college basketball here, and they're losing the those networks are losing March Madness too, which is really, really bad because and including CBS, like that family of networks, including CBS, has had March Madness for like its entire existence, and now it's going to go somewhere else. I absolutely hate that. Although I don't think that's happening yet, but it's still bad. Toronto at Tampa Bay is this game, the first game of the doubleheader. This game is somewhat of a mismatch. Tampa Bay is clearly the better team here. Toronto went into the break on a really nice run as well. They won 3 games in a row, though, well, I don't want to say really nice. It was 3 road wins, which is pretty good, but they beat Vancouver and Calgary, who suck, and then they beat Edmonton, so they did finish with one really big win. So the break might disrupt their momentum. So the break did not come at a good time for Toronto here. Although they might still get up for a game against Tampa Bay, because it is Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay went into the break on a very good note as well. They went into the break 5 wins in a row, including winning that, whatever it was, the fake outdoor game or whatever the hell it was against the Bruins. Which actually, no, wait, what game? I forget what game that was, because it wasn't the Winter Classic. It was something else. It was a bullshit game where the Bruins blew a massive lead. Whatever. Then Tampa beat Buffalo in overtime. Both of those games went into overtime. Then they murdered Florida going into the break. So this might be a very disruptive break for Tampa. And they have a huge game on deck against Carolina, who's one of the best teams in the league. So Tampa Bay might not take Toronto totally seriously here. I don't love how it sets up for Toronto, but I would probably have to lean towards Toronto, I guess, on the puck line here, because they are a big underdog. Tampa down from minus 240 to minus 210 already. 74% of tickets, only 73% of the cash on them. I would lean to taking the puck line with Toronto probably in that one. Seattle at Dallas. Seattle's not a very good team. They did go into the All-Star break, I keep saying the All-Star break. They went into the Olympic break on a nice run, though. Seattle had won 5 of their last 6 games, including winning their final game, going into the break. They're not going to overlook Dallas. It's a big game against Dallas. Dallas did go into the break on a good note as well. Dallas on a longer win streak. They went into the break on one of the longest win streaks, 6 wins in a row for Dallas, although it finished with a not great win over St. Louis, but might be a disruptive break for Dallas. I believe DeSmith is actually slated to be in net tonight, so you're going to get Dallas's lesser goaltender in net here for Dallas. I would lean to Seattle in this one. Probably in a price range where it's one of those bets where I would recommend doing like a split bet with part of it on the puck line, part of it on the money line to make your own +1 puck line. Dallas is already down from minus 178 to minus 162. 86% of the tickets and 75% of the cash on Dallas. The Republic side, I would agree with fading Dallas there and leaning towards Seattle, although I don't love it enough, but that's the way I would lean. Colorado at Utah. Interesting line in this one where Colorado looks way too easy to play with a very small money line on Colorado here. Colorado, after they were just outstanding throughout most of the season, they've been bad. Since like the beginning of the year, basically, they've been like a 500 team, which is not good. So maybe the break came at a good time, even though they won 2 of their last 3 games. Maybe they needed the break to try to, regain some of that former dominance. But having this one road game against Utah looks a little weird, and they do have a game against Minnesota tomorrow that might be considered to be better. That might be considered to be a bigger game, I should say. Utah, I think you're going to get focus out of Utah, even though they went into the break on 2 straight wins. So that break could disrupt their momentum a little bit, but they'll give you an effort against Colorado, man. And then Minnesota is going to have to play Utah on a back-to-back after they play Colorado. So that might be a game. I don't want to say that's a game to look towards Utah, though, because both teams are going to be coming off of playing against Colorado. So we have to see how these games play out. But in this game, the money's coming in on Utah, and I don't really have a reason to disagree with it. It looks way too easy to play Colorado here, down from minus 140 to minus 122. 58% of tickets, 65% of the cash on Utah. The money coming in on Utah. I do not disagree with Utah in that one, but I don't really have a great read on the game. Winnipeg at Vancouver. Now, when I first saw this on the schedule, I was thinking, well, this might be the situation where maybe you are going to have to look towards a letdown component to this, because we'd be talking about a goaltender, and the goaltender has a huge impact on the game. And we're talking about Hellebuck, who plays for Winnipeg, coming off a monster effort in the gold medal game where he had 41 saves, I think, in the game, and was just absolutely insane in the game, and he should have been the MVP. He was outstanding in the game, But then I looked at this game, and I'm like, oh, Winnipeg's laying a small price here against a terrible Vancouver team, a goalie that could be in like a personal letdown spot here. This might be a play on Vancouver. Then I looked, and Winnipeg has already listed Comrie as the starting goalie here. So Hellebuck is going to get a break, which makes sense because he just played that huge game in the Olympics. So he's not playing for Winnipeg in this game. So that letdown spot, I mean, maybe look to play it in Winnipeg's next game or whatever. But we can't do it here because, Hellebuck's not playing in this game. So Winnipeg did also go into the break on a really bad note. Well, they lost 3 of 4. They lost their last 2 games. They had an ugly home loss to Montreal, 5-1 going into the break. So, Winnipeg might show up for that reason. They do have Anaheim on deck, and that is a decent game. So I guess there is the argument they might still not take Vancouver seriously. Vancouver went into the break on 3 straight losses as well. So the break might help them disrupt that momentum. They might show up for a game against Winnipeg. The money looks like it's sort of indicating on Winnipeg. They're down from -135 to -130. 88% of the tickets, 96% of the cash on them. I think I'd probably still lean towards Vancouver. It just looks too easy to play Winnipeg here. Even though Vancouver's complete ass, maybe there is some value getting them at a home underdog price coming out of the break. The second TNT True TV HBO Max game is an interesting one with Vegas and the Kings because this is like a delayed zigzag spot, which is bizarre. These two teams played in the last day before the break. These teams played each other, and Vegas won 4-1. So this is like a delayed rematch between these two teams. I don't know if I've ever seen this, like an extended break where the same two teams that played each other going into the break are now playing each other again, and they're flipping venues. So Vegas has to go to the Kings here. Should be a revenge spot for the Kings, right? Because Vegas did beat them at Vegas right going into the break, and Vegas went into the break on a 2-game win streak. So, the break might disrupt Vegas's momentum a little bit. You got to think they might take LA a little bit unseriously here. But if you look at how that game played out, the one good thing for LA is that they did outshoot Vegas quite a bit. So you could make the argument that the stats kind of tell you that LA did play better than the final score looks, but maybe they didn't because Vegas had 62% of the face-offs almost. So Vegas did kind of dominate possession in the game, and I think LA just was firing up bad shots later in the game because they were losing the game 4-0. So I don't think that the stat sheet really indicates that it was that misleading of a result, although 4-1 is always going to be a little bit misleading, but Vegas did have the upper hand in that game. Still, it's an opportunity for LA to zigzag here, but the problem I also have with LA is they're terrible at home. I don't know if I ever want to play the Kings at home, man. Maybe in select spots, maybe you do. And I probably do still lean towards them in this game, but I don't think I could lay a price like this, a favorite price like this at home when they're 8-11-7 at home. That is horrible. 8 wins and 18 losses at home. I just don't think I could do it, man. And Vegas is not bad on the road. 13-8-7, not horrible. For LA, of course, they went into the break on a losing streak. They lost 3 games in a row, culminating in losing to Vegas. So this is a zigzag spot and a momentum spot that both do set up for LA here. They are an anti-public side. The public is coming in on Vegas, and you know what I talk about. A public underdog is not the way that you want to look in any sport, really. So I do still have to lean to LA in this game, but I don't think I could put it on my card. Maybe at the opener at -115, that was a decent price, but at -142, I just don't see being able to do it. Although I think still the only way I could really play this game is the Kings on the money line, but if it gets up past -150, I guess a split bet puck line, money line, but it's getting so pricey on a bad home team. I just don't think I could do it. 72% of tickets, 57% of the cash on Vegas. They are a public side with less of the money on them. Situationally, I would have to agree with the Kings, but some factors that make me not like it. And then Edmonton is at Anaheim. Edmonton went into the break on a bad note. 3 losses in a row. Losing to Calgary to finish it off, that's pretty bad, dude. So for Edmonton, they should use that break effectively. They should come out of the break with some fire. I mean, this is an Edmonton team that's not a bad team, and losing 3 straight games badly, giving up 4+ goals in all of them going into the break, especially losing to Calgary, their little brother basically in Alberta. That's not good. So I think they will show up with some effort here. I think that break should help them. The break might be disruptive to Anaheim because they went into the break on 2 wins against Vegas and then Seattle. Having a break when you go into it on a win streak is probably not a good thing, man. Anaheim was one of the hottest teams, actually, even though they lost a couple of games, including to Edmonton. So that's one concern, is that Anaheim might still show up here because Edmonton is a big opponent, and they kind of embarrassed Anaheim the last time they played in Edmonton, 7-4 on January 26th. But Anaheim did win 9 of their last 11 games. So they are a team coming out of a break that might disrupt a heater that they were on. I like Edmonton in this game. Anaheim, 76% of the tickets are on them, 53% of the cash on Edmonton. I will have to agree with the Edmonton side in that one. If Anaheim was coming off like a bigger game or they had an even longer win streak disrupted, I might give you that as a play. But yes, I do agree with Edmonton in that one, and that is a pretty strong market read agreeing with me on Edmonton there, even though they initially dropped on the money line, maybe because of a goaltender change. Although I don't even know about that because I think it is going to be Jarry in net, or however you pronounce his name. So that's the NHL board, man. And then we do have some NBA as well. There's an ESPN doubleheader with 2 pretty good games. With the first game up is Oklahoma City at Detroit. I do have a play in the NBA, like I said, so we will hit that. It's not in this game, though. SGA is still out for Oklahoma City, so that sucks for ESPN because they won't get a full OKC team here. OKC is on a back-to-back. They won again yesterday against Toronto, but it is still a back-to-back with travel, although Toronto to Detroit's not a huge travel leg, and it's a big ESPN game, so I expect Oklahoma City will show up here, but playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities, is not exactly easy. Detroit has the rest edge here. Detroit lost their last game to San Antonio on Monday, which I told you I liked the Spurs in that one because I thought you might get Detroit looking ahead a little bit to this game potentially. Even though I thought that was a big game for both teams, but Detroit did drop the game. But Detroit has the rest edge and the travel edge because they're staying at home. However, they lost a 6-game win streak, so that's something I don't love. When a team loses a 6-game win streak, a lot of times they will be hung over into the next game. So what do we do with this game? I mean, I'm staying away. I still lean to Detroit, but you do have to lay 7.5 now, up from 5.5. And some of that is because SGA is out. It looks like Jalen Williams might be hurt. I mean, these Thunder guys are always dealing with some injuries, man. So that has to do with why the line is where it is. I mean, it looks like maybe the number's a little bit too high on the Pistons, but the money is coming in that way. 53% of tickets on the Thunder, 62% of the cash on the Pistons. Generally, I agree with the Pistons. I agree with the situation on the Pistons. 7.5 seems a bit much, man. Oklahoma City, I mean, I don't know if they should really be that big of an underdog against anybody, even if it is on the road against a good Detroit team. Some of that is probably because OKC's on a back-to-back, too, so the odds makers always skew the line against the team that's on the back-to-back, sometimes too much. So I still agree with Detroit, but I think it's a bit of a price to lay there, so that is not my play. San Antonio at Toronto, you definitely could argue San Antonio is in a letdown spot because they just beat Detroit. Big win for San Antonio, man. Second straight road game here now, but unfortunately they only have Brooklyn on deck. If they had the Knicks on deck, which is their next opponent after that, I might be saying, yeah, we're going to do it with Toronto. This is a sandwich spot. But the way it is right now, it's just a letdown spot, I think, for the Spurs. Toronto is coming off a pretty big game against Oklahoma City, though, so I can't do it. Toronto played yesterday, like I said, and actually that game was close with like maybe 4 minutes to go. I think the game was tied, even though OKC won by 9. Toronto put in a huge effort in that game, so I cannot play Toronto here, man. Both teams are in fade spots. Toronto's also not a very good home team, so I got to stay away from this one. The money is actually coming in on the Spurs, up from 6.5 to 7.5. Spurs getting a ton of respect in the market, such that they're laying that many points on the road against a team with a winning record. That's pretty crazy. 83% of tickets, 95% of the cash on the Spurs. Of course, part of the reason, again, for the line being that high is because the Raptors played yesterday and the Spurs didn't. And while, yeah, I expect the Spurs to win that game, the spot's bad for both teams. I have to stay away from it. I think, if you force me to lean, I would probably still lean to the Spurs, but I can't lay a price like that on the road, man, especially coming off a big win. No way I could do it. Golden State at Memphis. This is an ugly game with teams that are without a lot of their starters, let's just say. Golden State just took a really bad loss yesterday to New Orleans. They were coming off a big win over Denver, so that was a letdown spot. I think I said I liked New Orleans in that game yesterday. They actually did win. And did New Orleans cover? I guess they probably must have, right? Yeah, they were 1.5-point dogs in the game. So it was a bad performance from Golden State. Even though they're on a back-to-back, they might show up in this game. But they do have a revenge game against the Lakers on ABC on deck. So that is a big game for Golden State coming up. So there is the worry that they might look ahead. Memphis is in an ugly situation themselves. They haven't played since Monday. They're staying at home, and they took a loss to the Kings, who had lost like 16 games in a row. And I believe my exact words were, if the Kings were going to win a game, it would be a game like that one against another team that basically has none of their starters playing anymore, Memphis. And indeed, Sacramento did win that game. So Memphis is coming off that. That's an ugly, ugly loss. So both teams are off ugly losses. Golden State has a potential look ahead to the Lakers, and Golden State played yesterday. So I would probably have to lean to Memphis here. And they're actually getting points. The Warriors are up to a 4-point favorite. 89% of tickets, 99% of the cash on the Warriors. So I don't know how much to read into that cash percentage, but the Warriors will be a public side here. Steph Curry is still out for the Warriors, so we don't have to worry about like a reverse injured player theory coming into play here. So that's not happening. Of course, we know Butler is out for the season, so no change there. But that's one where you're actually playing. If you take Memphis, you're actually playing against a team that's still laying points on the road despite being on a back-to-back, which is pretty crazy. So maybe there is a little bit of line value that's still there on the Memphis side in that one. Sacramento at Houston. Sacramento finally broke that long losing streak, man. So maybe that gives them some confidence, some new momentum. Because when things are going that badly and you've lost 16 whatever games in a row, if you finally win a game, it's like I think that monkey is off your back and now you can play a lot looser. You're not like that embarrassed of a team anymore. You finally got a win. You can just play a little bit better now. So maybe Sacramento will come into this game with a little bit of momentum. They'll probably show up for a game against Houston. Houston's coming up beating Utah, though, which wasn't a big deal, really. They do have Orlando, Miami on deck. I mean, any game is going to be bigger than a Sacramento game. So I would actually still probably lean to the Kings plus the points here, but no strong opinion from me on this one. The Rockets down from 14.5 to 14. We have 72% of the tickets and 97% of the cash on the Rockets. So it looks like some of the money coming in on the Rockets. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, although with a low total, laying that many points with the Rockets against a Sacramento team that might have some newfound confidence, I don't like that idea, so I still lean slightly towards Sacramento. Next up is the best bet, and then there's one other game to talk about. As ugly as it is, man, we're going to take the Milwaukee Bucks plus 9 without Giannis against Cleveland. Cleveland's the talk of the town right now, man, or the talk of the NBA. They're hot. Everybody's pretty much saying they're now the favorite to win the Eastern Conference. Everybody loves Cleveland. Oh, yeah, getting James Harden. Now Cleveland's this great team. I don't know, man. I mean, you know me. I don't like Harden as far as like a chemistry guy. I think he might never win a championship because, like, just team chemistry-wise, he hurts. But this Milwaukee team, by the way, they're playing sneakily pretty good, even though they're without Giannis right now. This Milwaukee team's kind of coming together. I mean, look at what they've done recently. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. That's not bad. Yeah, I know they're stepping up in class to play Cleveland, but they're playing at home. They're a huge underdog. I know they're on a back-to-back, but both teams are on a back-to-back. And, yeah, Milwaukee had a nice upset win yesterday against Miami. And, you know, usually I'm not going to like to play on a team that pulled off an upset like Milwaukee did. But they're playing Cleveland here, man. So you know you're probably going to get another effort out of them here. They're staying at home which is a lot better than the spot for Cleveland. Cleveland just had a very satisfying win against the New York Knicks, who a lot of people, including me, are saying that the Knicks are one of their main competition for winning the Eastern Conference. That was a monster win against the Knicks. In the game prior to that, they played Oklahoma City on the road and blew the game. They were beating Oklahoma City for the majority of that game, I think. So Cleveland's coming off 2 monster games, and they have a huge ESPN game on deck against Detroit. So this is a sandwich spot, man. Big-time sandwich spot, even though generally I would probably stay away with Milwaukee having pulled off an upset in their last game, but both teams on the back-to-back. Milwaukee's staying at home. Cleveland is having to travel to Milwaukee for this, and they have to bounce back to Detroit after this. I see this as a major sandwich spot for Cleveland here, man. We'll play the Bucks. 77% of tickets, 81% of the cash on Cleveland. This is the best I got for today, man. Cavs are laying 9 on the road. Let's get back and get some wins in the NBA finally, man, because the NBA historically has been my best sport, and it has not been good recently, so we need to get back on track in the NBA. And my reads in the NBA are usually good. And then we do finish it off with my Boston Celtics, who are unfortunately on a back-to-back at Denver here on ESPN. Now, the Celtics do have a road revenge angle here because the other time they played Denver this year, they lost at home by 1 point, I think. But the Celtics have already won this road trip. They've won 3 games in a row. Seems like the Celtics are kind of mentally like, we can't take this 20th loss here, guys, as they keep winning. But this is going to be a difficult ask, man. They're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, all in different cities, having to go into elevation. They got Denver here. Denver is not a fully intact team, but of course neither are the Celtics. Celtics without Tatum, but they've been playing surprisingly well without him. Denver, it's kind of the usual. We know Aaron Gordon is still out. He's coming back soon. Jamal Murray's a game-time decision, so something to watch there. He's probable. I mean, I assumed he would play. So we got that going on. Jaylen Brown's a game-time decision. He did not play last night, by the way, so that was one thing I did not consider as far as that handicap for the Celtics. So the Celtics might have actually played with a little bit more effort because Brown was out, so that sucks. I didn't realize that, but I still really liked the spot for the Suns there. Brown, I'm assuming he'll play. I think it was probably more of a rest day for him. They said it was a bruised knee, but I'm pretty sure he's going to play. I think they probably just wanted to rest their best player and get him ready for this Denver game. So that kind of tells you the Celtics are actually taking this game seriously. But the Celtics played yesterday and Denver did not. And Denver's coming off kind of an ugly loss at Golden State, although they are returning home from a road trip, but not a long road trip, you know. It was a road trip. Well, it was almost a week. They were on the road the entire time after the All-Star break. So, yeah, I mean, you could argue, yeah, it's a return home spot where these guys have been away for a while. They do have to get back to home life. Maybe a little bit of a distraction there. They have more rest, though. They've been off since Sunday. They took a loss to Golden State on Sunday. They do have Oklahoma City on deck, which is a huge game as well, though I don't think they're going to overlook Boston, though. So I kind of lean towards Denver, but the money is disagreeing. So, you know, I'm going to root for the Celtics, and we'll see what happens. But Denver down from 4 to 3.5 here, 67% of tickets on them, 53% of the cash on them. So less of the money on Denver than the amount of tickets. So the market read is saying Celtics for now, plus the points. But we'll see what happens, man. I'm not touching that game. That's it. Once again, my only play on this huge Wednesday board is the Milwaukee Bucks plus the points. That's what we're going with. That's going to do it. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Learn to Toad on Twitter. You can subscribe to me there. Throw me some support there. It all helps me out, man. Like, subscribe to the channel here. Let's boost this thing, man. We want to get it monetized. First, we got to hit the 500 subscriber threshold. So let's keep working towards it. Let's get it done. Give me good replies on here as well. Send it around. Tell everybody about it. Maybe this could be your daily show to get the most betting information that you can from a bald autist. Covered in Uke. Check that out too. My Uke channel on YouTube. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. You can get some bonus Uke stuff. Throw me some support there. It all helps me out, man. Listen to this show on audio, by the way, because we are back on audio. Listening there, giving me a review. Helps me out there on Apple and Spotify. And then Losercast. We had a new episode last night. Shorthanded as far as our lineup last night, but it was another fun episode. We nominated some losers. You can go check that out on the Losercast. And that will do it, man. I appreciate it. I know I went early today. Thanks, Kyle, for hanging out early in the day. But I had to do it. We'll see. I might be hosting my mom here because she still doesn't have power. So I'm like, all right, well, come to my place. We got warmth, baby. We got heat. That's going to do it. Not the Miami Heat. That's going to do it. Peace, guys. Until tomorrow.